Hello gamers, welcome to another edition of Magehammer's Musings. I have something on my mind and I decided I'd make a video to talk about it and see what you all think out there in YouTube world. So, I am currently going to be 55 years old in June. And I have been playing role-playing games since I was 12, so that'll be 43 years of playing tabletop fantasy role-playing games and other role-playing games as well. And as I've gotten older, my tastes for what I am willing to run have changed, right? In the old days, in the 82, when I first started, we didn't really have any real choices. We had basic Dungeons and Dragons, and then I think Call of Cthulhu came out soon after that, maybe, and then Tunnels and Trolls, but Tunnels and Trolls was not on my radar back then. It was not available in my area. So, of course, before the internet, I didn't really know much about it. I maybe saw it in Dragon Magazine once I started getting Dragon Magazine, but anyway, I didn't have a choice. So, ran BX, and when Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out, we started running that, first edition. And then as time went on, second edition D&D, and I got Gamma World, and I never really managed to run it back then. We tried, I think we maybe ran one game, something like that, and didn't quite know what we were doing. So our choices were limited by A, our geography, and B, our interests. So, you know, I tried Marvel Superheroes when it came out, the original Phase Rip, and it was fun. We played several games of that, but of course that's getting up there in my gaming life a little bit. The teenager years of my gaming life, I don't know. So anyway, Star Frontiers came out, played that. You know, we tried those games. Those were ones that came out in our area and that we felt we might be interested in. They never really took. We always went back to the fantasy. You know, obviously there's something about fantasy role-playing games that doesn't quite, the other games don't quite match up to, I guess. Yeah, anyway. That's topic for another video. Genre RPGs. So now as I've gone through the years and ages, we got kind of tired. Well, we played Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, but we had the urge to like upgrade. So as soon as 3rd edition came out, we had to start playing that. We had to start playing 3.5, jumped on the bandwagon there. And then we even tried Pathfinder when 4th edition came out. We tried 4th edition for a year, and we just stuck with D&D. We participated in the D&D Next playtest. We sent our information back to Wizards of the Coast. We played, and then when 5th edition came out, we played the heck out of it, played it for many years. And, then at some point during 3rd edition, we jumped into Castles and Crusades. We jumped into Savage Worlds. Because 3rd edition was starting to get, we were getting up higher levels and it was just unwieldy. And we're like, oh, do we want to start our campaign? Let's try something different. So Cast Crusades was a breath of fresh air. The OSR started to hit, when the OSR started to hit, like Osric, we got it. We looked at it, but it's like, let's just stick with what's modern now, and then, so we stuck with Dungeons and Dragons pretty much. And then from Savage Worlds, and I think I've probably said this in other videos, but my gaming group, we played Savage Worlds for several campaigns. I played a sci-fi campaign with it, Space Pulp, and then I think it was one of my other players like, you know what, I just want to start rolling D20s again. I was like, okay, so we went back to D&D, or actually it was Castle Crusades, and then I ran Castle Crusades there. So that's kind of a little timeline, a very muddled timeline for my experiences with Dungeons and Dragons and other and some other role-playing systems. I occasionally deviate and go play in other genres. We've run in Call of Cthulhu, Tiny Cthulhu, the Tiny D6, games. I love them, and so we did Darwin's World, which was a D20 version, kind of a very dark and gritty Gamma World-ish kind of game. It was really good. Someday I might do a video featuring all of my post-apocalyptic games like I did for my pulp games. It's just in the back recesses of my mind. But as time has gone on, I have less and less patience for crunchy systems. And I've gone a more rules light / minimalist route. And I don't know if your experience is the same as you've gotten older. Those are your older gamers that are listening to this. And I guess according to my analytics, most of you are older gamers. I'd be interested in knowing what your journey has been. If you want to put that in the comments below, kind of share in on this conversation. But I came to a realization the other day when I was watching a solo RPG video. Maybe it was Tabletop Wanderer. He was playing. Anyway, it's a D20 system of some kind. And I just watch it and I'm like, I'm kind of bored of the D20. I'm really bored of it. And then I'm pretty sure that's deep in the my back of mind. That's why I designed my game, Delves and Dangers, with a D6 and 6 Dice Fantasy. I designed with the D6, and I pretty much am designing exclusively with the D6 for games that I like to play, either solo games. Like my 4 dice games are all D6 for the most part, right? Just love the D6. It's just so accessible to everybody, and it's just iconic. I know the D20 is iconic too. The D6 was here first. But I love the D6, and I know there's other dice out there. I know in the miniature wargaming world, many wargamings come out with the Savage, or whatever it was. What's the name of their? Oh, I can't remember the name of their new game. I had it in my head just a second ago. I think it uses D8s or D10s or something. D10's a big one out there in the miniature wargaming world. But to me, the D6 is really just magical, and I just really love designing around it, and I love playing games that feature the D6. Another reason I'm a huge fan of Tiny D6, because that's a D6 system. I love it. The D6 system from before by West End Games that ran Star Wars, and I've showed off in my pulp. I have the Universal system I showed off in my pulp video. It just was too much for me. It was too fiddly. I didn't really like it, but still, it's a D6 game. Anyway, so D6 games are great. Okay, but I also understand, I am not just a solo gamer. I am blessed to be able to sit down with 2 groups a month. And one of them, of course, and I've mentioned this before, one of them is online, where currently an old friend of mine is running a 5th edition D20 game. 5th edition D&D game, and I'm having a blast. I'm having fun. I like hanging out with the guys via Discord, and we it's I rolled a D20 and there we go. And then I have a face-to-face group, which currently I had just finished a long-running basic fantasy RPG campaign, and my friend Zoltar, I'll call him on the internet, he kind of delved back into OSR because I think he was having a very huge dose of nostalgia and wanted to play, like we used to play back in the BX days. So, old school essentials, OSE, I think that's the game he's running. I think it really takes BX and really elevates it into the modern formatting world. It's still the same system, but it's just prettier to look at. So we're exploring old school essentials, and fresh off of my basic fantasy RPG, I ran a one-shot for them with Delves and Dangers. It was a lot of fun. My own game. They all seem to have a good time. So, but I am lucky to be able to play face-to-face, and in addition to all the solo play I do here on my channel, because I love both versions of that, solo play and face-to-face. But my turn at the behind the screen, quote unquote, even though I don't really use a screen, my turn behind the screen is going to be coming up eventually in either one of those groups that I play with. And because thank goodness we don't have forever DMs in either group. We really share the game mastering, which is really great, and we're very lucky to have that situation as well. But the question will be, what system do I want to run? And I know it's not going to be 5e. I cannot wrap my old brain around it anymore. There's too much, especially now with 2024 or whatever we're calling the 6th edition of D&D. I have the books because I have the D&D versions, going back to BX, and I have every version from there on up, including 4th edition. And I just kind of looked. I had no real interest in reading it. I'm only collecting it, so I will not be switching to that. Now, if one of the other game masters wants to run those things, I'll play any system, right? I'll be a player in any system. I think that's an important distinction. I love role-playing games. They were transformative in my life. I've mentioned that in many Magehammer's Musings. I love the whole idea of it. I love the social aspect of it. I love the imagination aspect of it. I love the mechanical aspect. It just, I love role-playing games. So I will be a player in any game. But as a game master, I'm just tired. I also, I'm one of those players that really likes to have, I really like to have story and character be at the forefront of my games. And of course, I've had that discussion recently with somebody on one of my on my basic fantasy video about emergent storytelling. He prefers that, and I guess I prefer more of a hybrid. I like to have a initiate the action. I like to have a MacGuffin for the most part. And I like to have a villain or two already kind of in my mind, and then I let the story go wherever it takes and let the characters take that story wherever it is. But at least I have that rough structure to guide the action a little bit. It's a hybrid between sandboxy and railroading. So let me know what you think about that. So the point of that is that because of my style that I like to run in games, I just have leaned more towards having a system that is that gets out of the way, and lets the characters take the front and center, or quote unquote the story take front and center. So I need a game that has game master adjudication. There's not a rule for everything, the game master, but there is a mechanic built into the game where the game master can say, okay, roll a couple dice and against this whatever and see if that works. I like being able to do. I don't like to have a huge tome book that has a rule for everything. And so the other thing is, I have collected and bought quite a few role-playing games over the years. Nowhere near all of them, and frankly, I have a few of the hotties in that are hot right now out in the world that I don't even own. I think like White Box is big right now, Cairn is big right now, which I'm sure they're wonderful systems, and I've seen people play them on the internet, but I'm like, well, Basic Fantasy or Castle Crusades kind of does that for me. So, or Shadow Dark, oh, that's a big one. So I have a Shadow Dark beginner's guide simply because I got it for the adventure that they have in there, the Red Minotaur, Crimson Minotaur, and I used that in a face-to-face with my Delves and Dangers one-shot. So I used it for Delves and Dangers. I didn't really use it for Shadow Dark itself. Easy D6 is out there. I own it, and I've read it, but I don't know, had some friction points for me. So anyway, the point of that is the three games that have come to the forefront that fit my gaming philosophy are three that I have played extensively and have game mastered extensively and enjoy game mastering them. The other systems that I've game mastered over time, I've worn out on, but these systems I think are still percolating in my mind as game systems I don't mind running because there's fewer and fewer friction points for me. So I'm going to present those to you today, and I would like to get your feedback. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm way off on this? Do you think I'm being foolish, or do you agree with me? Do you think that you too are leaning towards games of lighter crunch, so to speak. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So I am going to present these games to you and talk a little bit about each and why they are the games that I can still game master face to face. So let me make a caveat. I obviously, based on what the content you see on my channel, I will run a variety of different games solo because, you know, but I also want to say the solo, I'll try other systems. I might even play a 5th edition solo someday. I don't know. I'm not leaning towards that. But I will say another part of my heart is saying, maybe these systems I'm about to present to you are the only ones I'm going to run solo from now on. I hate to say that, but every time I go and think about running another system, I'm like, well, this one does that, so I'd rather do that. So I don't know. That's not to say that, yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed my series that I did. I have a playlist of it, of solo one-shots where I just took a system and I ran one system with it. I ran one game with it. I think that's really fun because I think some of those systems that I ran, I don't think I'd be able to do multiple arc campaign like I do with the other systems. Like, you know, I have a very extensive basic fantasy campaign. I have a very extensive Castle Crusades. I have a very extensive Six Dice Fantasy. I have very extensive Delves and Dangers. And I have no friction points. I really enjoy just running those all the way through solo. And as you know, in fact, I just had another discussion about this particular topic in my comments on one of my videos, is that I like to run multiple characters. I like the dynamics. You know, I don't mind having voices for the characters and having the characters like have a little bit of dialogue during my solo sessions. It works for me. And that's why I don't ever play quote unquote true solo. I like to have multiple characters, and 4 seems to be a sweet spot, but depending on the system and how crunchy it is, sometimes I might need to go with 3 because that's a lot to keep track of when you're solo gaming. If the system has a medium crunch or so, and that's quite a bit, rules crunch, and that's quite a bit to really kind of track. So I prefer, but I still prefer playing with multiple characters, but I might play with 3, maybe even 2 if the system's really crunchy and I want to play it solo. Anyway, but these 3 systems, I will have no reservations about running face-to-face, and I have no reservations running them solo. In fact, I prefer to run these 3 games solo. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the first one. It is basic fantasy role-playing game. As you know, I have a campaign, I was like over 20 videos telling the tale using the basic fantasy role-playing game. Now, yes, I use house rules, and that video you can check out and see what my house rules are. Some people like my house rules and some people don't like my house rules. But if I'm running solo, it's my game. And if they would like to watch and maybe just see how it all plays out, I really invite them to do so, right? But I like basic fantasy for a couple of reasons. One, it has the old school feel, right? But it has more modern, a few modern tweaks, but it is still very old school. Make no mistake. It has ascending armor class, which I prefer. I know Thaco, okay, and I'm playing Thaco in OSE. I'm living with it. But as a game master, I prefer just, you know, roll a d20, add some numbers, and hit a number. I just think that's the best way to run combat in a d20 system. But your mileage may vary, and let me know if you really prefer Thaco. You just let me know. But I like that part of it. That was one of the things that attracted to me. The other thing is that it is got a BX feel, but it also has advanced Dungeons and Dragons idea of species, race, whatever they call it, and class. I think when that came out in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I applauded that, and I've loved it ever since. That was one of the big problems I have with BX. It's one of the big problems I have with OSE. At least the way OSE has made some. OSE does have a version where you can play race and class, but this is right out of the gate. That's the way it goes, and I really prefer that. So they did that with a BX feel and some BX, you know, mechanics, but they did it with race class, and I just think that makes sense. There's no reason in the world a halfling can't be a wizard, or well, they forbid dwarves from being halflings, or from being wizards in here. Did they forbid? I think they forbid halflings too. But in my house rules, I of course changed that up. Yeah, they may not be magic users nor can dwarves, but I allowed that to happen in my house rules. So I don't. That's why I still have the belief that I don't understand why a dwarf or a halfling can't be a magic user or a cleric or something. So so that's one house rule thing I make, because I want the game to be about options, but not too many options, right? I want it to be about a manageable options, we'll call it. And I think this does it. The other thing I love about Basic Fantasy is the entire game is in one volume. You've got your class, races, the rules, spells, monsters, Dungeon Master Advice, Game Master Advice, all rolled into one volume if you so choose. Now, of course, their website is massive with downloads of people that have free variations to the game, house rules, classes, races. They have all kinds of stuff, and it's the best thing about Basic Fantasy, and the one reason I still love it, especially to bring it to a face-to-face table, especially if I'm introducing it to a new group or a group of teenagers or whoever don't have a ton of money, is it's all free or extremely affordable to get a hold of a print, right? This costs, like, what did this cost me, 10 bucks? The print book cost me 10 bucks, I think, on Amazon. The hardcovers cost like 14, 15, like, for an entire game, like, and then you don't even have to pay for it if you don't want to. I mean, it even says it on the back of the book. Don't buy this. Oh, it doesn't say it here on this one. It says it on most of their products. It says, don't buy this game. Download it for free, because I want to be kind of an open source role-playing system. So that is hugely attractive to me for bringing it to other players. But yes, I do house rule it. I probably wouldn't, I rarely play any system rules as written, because there's just certain things about each system that is a friction point for me. But as long as the players are having fun at the table, and my players seem to enjoy this system for the most part, but it's also so modular. They have a spell slot system in their options, so I used the spell slot system, which was more palatable to some of my younger players who grew up on 5th edition. So it says, so Basic Fantasy, to review, it is very accessible, free to play. It is also, it has an huge old school vibe and a lot of old school mechanics, while having that D20 roll over, equal to or over mechanic that I love and just makes a lot of sense to my brain. And then it's easily home rules. House rules. It's easily house ruled. Thank you, brain. It's easily house ruled, and still holds up and keeps its structure under that weight. So I really do enjoy this, and I will continue to run this face to face for people. All right, next up is Castles and Crusades. Now, as you know, I've been playing Castles and Crusades for double-digit years. This is their new reforged player's handbook. I think it's like the 11th printing. Remember, this edition has really not changed. This is the 10th printing, so it's the 10th printing of the game. They redid some of the layout, and they put in new art and old art. They mixed in some new art, and they updated that. They updated some of the fonts and stuff. And so this game is, to me, and I've said this before, I'm sure, is what 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons should have been. It is, to me, what I like to call Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 3.0, because it still has a very great 2nd edition vibe to it. I mean, I know this is a 1st edition homage cover, but ultimately it has a very strong 2nd edition vibe to it. And then they've taken and unified it under one D20 mechanic. Everything, skills. Well, there's not really skills. There's the Siege Engine, which I have a video on the Siege Engine explaining that. You can go check that out if you like. But it's D20 for saving throws, D20 for can your character do something, and D20 for combat. And I just think the unifying mechanic of that was a great move. And frankly, this game has been hugely successful, right? They're on their 10th printing now. I believe they've been out since 2005. That's like, 20, this is like their 20, what's this? Wait a second. This is an anniversary edition. So Looks like it came out in 1999. This is their 25th anniversary as a company, and I think this might be 15 years for Castles and Crusades. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below if you know. So, but this game really brings out the nostalgia for me, because we played some BX back in the day, but by the time we really got any traction on the Moldvay version of BX, first edition came out, and that's where we played the most until probably third edition. We played in first and second edition for a long time, and to me that is, in my nostalgic mind, Dungeons and Dragons. And so this captures that, but then also makes it much more accessible with fewer of the friction points. Like, I've never really been a fan of Thieves' abilities being percentile when the D20 is just, it's right there, folks. It's right there. So these guys recognize that, and they went with it when they designed the game. And so I like the Siege engine for flexibility, and I feel that as for a medium crunch game, because this does have 3 volumes, and you have to buy all 3, but you can download their Player's Handbook for free as a PDF on their websites, which I think is amazing. That's great. Their Castle Keeper's Guide is completely and totally optional. Everything in it is optional, right? So it has rules for, you know, you can shake this game up any way you want, and it will also hold up under what they've put into that Castle Keeper's Guide. You can add your own house rules into it, and it holds up wonderfully. That D20 siege mechanic is really solid and firm, and it's a great foundation to lay a rule system on. And then they have Monsters and Treasure, so they have the Monsters and Treasure in one book, which is great. They don't have the magic items and stuff in the Castle Keeper's Guide. Literally, Castle Keeper's Guide is completely optional, and I think that that is just a really good move. So a player buys the Player's Handbook, a Game Master buys Player's Handbook and Monsters and Treasure, and they don't necessarily have to buy the Castle Keeper Guide if they don't want to, because you can play the game straight out of this with the Monsters and Treasure. Easily, and same thing with Basic Fantasy. You can easily convert any D&D, D20 based, old school Renaissance, new 5th edition adventure to the Castle Crusades system or the Basic Fantasy system with very little. I mean, I do it on the fly these days, you know, because most of the monsters are in the Monsters and Treasure book from Castles and Crusades that have been in the game forever, and you just bring that up and there you go. If there's a newer monster, it's very easy to port it in. So I will still run Castle Crusades face-to-face if I'm really looking for a medium crunch and I'm really in the mood for the D20. And I would play it more with my veteran players. Like Basic Fantasy, I think is really good to introduce to people. And I think, in fact, right now, this is my go-to D20 system, Castles and Crusades. I haven't run it in a long time, except for my solo version. Even that's getting to be quite a while now. But it is a great system. It is a great game, and it is, to me, this is Dungeons and Dragons with everything that term brings with it. This game is Dungeons and Dragons to me. So if I said I was going to play Dungeons and Dragons, I actually mean I'm going to play Castles and Crusades. So. And then finally, the other game I will run is my own. And, you know, I'm not just being like, no, and I've said this many times, I wanted a game that I loved to play, given my advanced age as a gamer, right? And I've designed several different systems over the years. 6 Dice Fantasy was one that I felt worked really well, but even 6 Dice Fantasy, it was, with the defensive role, to me, it was even not as fast at the table as I wanted it to be. So I set out to create another game that was literally attack and damage roll in one roll to speed combat and gameplay up. It also had to have a mechanic where if you want to do something, you have to roll to be able to do it, but it also had to be challenging. And so I built the game to do that without, you know, so it's not too easy, but it's also challenging to do things, and it can be very dangerous because of that. So to be truthful, this is the only game I want to run anymore. It's the only game I want to run face-to-face, and it's the only game I want to run solo. As of right now, as of recording of this video, and one of the main reasons I'm making this video, is to say that this is the game that I love. Now, I know I designed it, but I designed it to be the perfect game for me, and I'm hoping, and as people have watched me play it on my channel, and I've played it face-to-face with a couple other groups of people, that they've had a good time with it, and I believe they have. I think the only thing that would prevent my players from wanting to play it is that it is minimalist to a point where when you go up a level, you gain some more stamina, and depending on what level it is, you may gain some more dice to roll, which dice to roll, for me, rolling dice is the best thing. You don't want it to become too unwieldy, like let's say Tunnels and Trolls has become sometimes in the past at upper levels and stuff. You're literally rolling bucketfuls of dice, but like still quite a few dice, right? Because people love to roll dice. They love to roll more than one dice. And so that was one of the design system that I wanted to put into the system, but I didn't want it to become way too much dice. And the only time I think the system becomes unwieldy dice-wise is when you hit 20th level. I think by that time, I think I've figured it out. I think a warrior optimized up to heavy weapon, two-handed weapon, whatever, and all their abilities is probably rolling close to 28 dice when they attack with a weapon, and a wizard is at the 20th level wizard is rolling 33 dice. Now, most campaigns don't get to 20th level, but if they do, I still think obviously this game can handle it. But before you get up there, I kind of designed it so that the dice don't accelerate that much, but it's still, you still feel like your character is doing what your character is supposed to be doing. Anyway, so it's designed with only D6s, and I love playing it. I love how it plays. It does everything I want a system to do. It gets out of the way better than any other game I've played. Maybe with the exception of Tiny D6, but kind of Tiny D6 was kind of part of an inspiration for the creation of this. I guess I could take this time to say why I kind of moved away from Tiny D6 and created my own is because Tiny D6 only had 3 dice, and I wanted more. I wanted more dice. So anyway, so what I'm saying is that obviously since I designed this game, you would think that that is going to be the game that I want to play. But I love it though. I think it's a great game, and I think the people that have played with it face-to-face have had a great time at the table playing it. The only real question mark is, if I were to run this for them in a campaign, would they become disgruntled with the lack of options, since these days modern gamers are spoiled for that basically their characters are superhero in a fantasy RPG, and you know, here we are with fewer options. You still get better, but it's simpler out of the gate, and it's more about the character itself, and you do get better, and you do get more stamina, you do become more survivable, but your character is dictated more by how you role play it and the decision you make at the table rather than an ability on your character sheet. So I'm hoping that the next time I sit behind the screen, I'm going to run Dells and Dangers for my face-to-face groups, and I'm going to see if that holds up, and see if they have a good time throughout the campaign. And then when the campaign's over, obviously the Zoltar will probably take over behind the screen, and we'll see how it goes. So I have played it, obviously. I've solo played it up to like 5th level. I play tested it. I ran a couple combats with characters who are like 10th, 11th, and 12th level, and I still think it holds up, and I had a good time. So I'm hoping that they see it that way as well. And if they don't, then I won't run it for them anymore, and I can play it solo anytime I want, and I can go to a game that they would prefer to play. I don't know. But the one-shots that I've run for face-to-face with Dells and Dangers have gone great. So I'm hoping that they stick with that. Now, one last thing I'd like to say is that this is fantasy RPGs. I will GM face-to-face Tiny Cthulhu. I will do my Daring and Dangers. I will do Tiny Supers. If people, you know, I will run other genres of RPGs from other systems, Tiny Wastelands or whatever, you know, depending on what genre they want to play. This is just fantasy RPGs for this video. So I want to make sure that there's a distinction. And so those are my thoughts here on Magehammer's Musings. It's just something I had to get off my chest. And so let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Thank you once again for listening, and hopefully you found something valuable out of this musing. And until next time, thank you, and keep on rolling dice and playing games. Magehammer out.